Okay, so I'm going to be reviewing Star Wars The Force Awakens. And not only is that scary enough, but it's my first movie review. I've only been reviewing trailers up until this point. Yeah, wish me luck. Hope I don't F it up. Here we go. First off, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I don't believe in ruining movies. That's a dick thing to do. And if you do that to people, you are horrible and terrible. And yeah, you should just not be on the earth anymore. I did see this movie twice, so full disclosure. I did see it both times in 3D. I feel the need to see it in 2D just because I don't feel like the 3D really added anything spectacular to the experience. So I'm going to know better once I see it in 2D. But also, a lot of criticisms that the 3D gets is because the 3D glasses, the tinted lenses, they tend to darken the image, the film a bit. And I took off my glasses for a few moments, and yeah, it's noticeable. So I definitely feel a need to see it in 2D. I'm also going to ask you guys to do your best to separate the hype and your own personal expectations, and get in the right mindset to see this movie and just appreciate it for what it is. Because what happened to me and one of the reasons why I needed to see it twice is because I was so busy trying to piece together the plot before it happened as the movie was going on. I'm remembering everything that I saw in the trailer from the marketing and the merchandising, that I was trying to play Nancy Drew in my head and solve a mystery as opposed to actually experiencing a movie. So what I'm doing in my head was, well, this person still has to do this because I saw that in the trailer, and because of what the packaging on this toy said, this character is more than likely going to do that. Yeah, don't do that. Don't be me. Just experience the movie for what it is, and I think everybody will have a much better time because of it. So let's move on to the actual movie. I really liked this movie. This movie is very, very good. If I were to grade it, I'd probably give it a B+. I could be argued into an A- though. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I don't think it's a flawless movie. I don't think it's a transcendent piece of cinema. I do think it's a very welcome addition to the Star Wars universe. I think it's definitely better than anything the prequels ever gave us. I don't think it's as good as, say, for example, Empire Strikes Back or even Return of the Jedi, but yeah, it's a very, very good movie. It's good stuff. I guess we can go through the things that I really did like about it first. So the first thing that I really liked, and I actually had to... Okay, so J.J. Abrams announced that they were going to make a return to practical effects, that they were going to shoot on location, that they were going to try to use as much of what they could. If they could create it physically, and if it wasn't, outside of the laws of physics, then they were going to do their damnedest to actually recreate it instead of just putting it together in post with CGI. So, models, costumes, prosthetics, and makeup instead of just, creating it all in a computer somewhere. So that was, exciting to hear. But then once I started watching this movie, what I realized is that because I live in an age where practical effects are more of a novelty, if a movie decides to do something practically, what usually happens is that they decide to really show it off with like these long lingering camera shots. They figure they put in the time, work, and money into it, they better get, the most they can out of it. Unfortunately, that means that kind of becomes the focus for either a moment or a scene or sometimes even an entire movie. Here, those practical effects are just used to kind of enhance the movie. They're used sometimes even just in the background. So there were moments when I had to remind myself, like, no, take a look at what's happening in the background. Take a look at and really appreciate everything that's happening, because it's not just, this is stuff that's actually existing. This is stuff that's happening. And I wasn't used to that just because my mind isn't programmed that as someone who has grown up in the time that I have. So if you're going to be doing, seeing this movie multiple times, I definitely recommend that you take the moment to appreciate how beautiful everything is and how gorgeous and detailed it is. So yeah, congrats, Mr. Abrams. That stuff looks amazing. One of the other stuff that I really liked was the character archetypes. So the worst thing they could have done for this movie is if they just took those same stock Star Wars characters and just sort of gave them new names and new looks, and we would all be sitting here saying, oh, that's the new Luke, that's the new Leia, that's the new Han. And there are definitely aspects of those characters that are integrated into these new characters. Some characters are very reminiscent of the old characters, but what they're doing is sort of combining aspects of certain not just the main characters from the old trilogy, but other archetypes, and they're combining them in ways that make them feel as if they belong completely and totally within the Star Wars universe, but they still feel new and refreshing. Also, the cast helps immensely because the cast is all perfect. I mean, the new actors, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, they're all fantastic. I mean, John Boyega ends up being one of the funniest parts about this movie. Oscar Isaac, his character Poe doesn't really get as much screen time as I would want. I have a feeling that a lot of his scenes were cut, but what he does get is wonderful. It goes a long way. Daisy Ridley as Rey. She is, I could argue that I'll go ahead and say it. She is the best part about this movie. Daisy Ridley is forever now and forevermore Rey. Just in the same way that Mark Hamill is now and forevermore Luke Skywalker. I mean, the character is that iconic. The performance is that good. She is going to be this character for the rest of her life. Even if she goes on to a beautiful, wonderful, decades-long career. No, that's Rey. I love her. She's great. You know what? I take that back. She may not be the best part about this movie. It might be Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is now my favorite new Star Wars character. Like, ever. Didn't see that coming. And what's great about Adam Driver playing this character is that he gives us a villain that is intimidating, is formidable, but is not an over-the-top cartoon character, or that he's not human, because it's still a human character, and he's believable, and he's, in some parts straight up sympathetic. And that's difficult to do without, completely losing your edge as a villain. And loved him. You know what? Kylo Ren as a character, he is everything that we wanted Anakin Skywalker to be, and I love him. He's probably the best part about the movie. I could argue for one of those. But anyways, another thing. Okay, so funny. This movie is funny. This is the funniest Star Wars movie that we ever got. And they didn't set out to make a comedy. I just think, knowing J.J. Abrams' work and being a fan of his as I am, I should have expected it, just because that seems to always be one of his tools in his arsenal. He'll imbue his characters and his stories with enough sense of humor to make them feel real and accessible. And it definitely works for this movie, just because it does feel extremely accessible. These characters feel like they're actual people that you can relate to, instead of just walking plot points. And what I like about it the most is the fact that there are moments in which I have to remind myself that it is a Star Wars movie, and it is set in a galaxy far, far away. But it's great that I feel like I could actually interact with these people as real people. And that's the best thing. So while the characters and the actors are like the best part about this movie, the story is where it seems to be noticeably lacking. And I guess we can now get into the stuff I didn't like. So the plot, there are going to be specific plot points that happen in this movie, and you're going to be able to turn to the person next to you and say, didn't we see that in that other Star Wars movie? There are moments that are straight lifted from other Star Wars. I mean, like, not in a nice little homage way, like straight lifted. And because you've seen those moments before, it certainly takes the tension out of it. It's certainly just sort of, you just like, oh, okay, I guess we're going again. That's a thing we're doing again. Okay, why not? And because of the charm and how great the performance of the characters and their actors are, you let it slide because it's amusing and you're still having a grand time. But it definitely takes you out of the moment, I feel, just because you then become aware that you're watching Star Wars as opposed to just enjoying it. Also, the music. Listen, I don't go to Star Wars to hear John Williams being subtle. I don't know if he just felt especially soft that day, and he just was like, let's just make everything really pretty, and just sort of turn down the sound on it a little bit, and just, no real new iconic music, maybe just some atmosphere pieces, and just, what? No, dude, you're John Williams. This is Star Wars. This is the time to break out the brass and crank up the volume and make everything sound vaguely of Christmas somehow. I don't know how he does that, but it just, I think what upsets me is that even the shittiest Star Wars movies, even Episode 1, even though in Episode 2, even they had great, iconic music moments. Episode 1 had Duel of the Fates, Episode 2 had Across the Stars. That it's probably the only worthwhile thing that we got out of that whole romance subplot. And here is a great movie that definitely could have been elevated if it gave us, some really amazing, iconic, I'm sure there is new music. I haven't sat down to listen to the whole soundtrack on its own, but there isn't that great, incredible, instantly hummable tune in there. And that's surprising because, again, it's John Williams, and this is the moment to be the most John Williams that you've ever been in your life, and you're going to, save it? I don't know what's happening. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's a sound mixing thing. Maybe there is something, once I go back and actually listen to the whole soundtrack, maybe there is something really amazing in there, and I'm just going to be like, well, where the hell was it? Did they just turned the volume all the hell down and decided to just... I'm sorry. I got really heated about that for a moment. What else did I not like? Okay. There is a couple scenes in this movie that happens around right in the middle of it. And because the rest of the movie is just moving at a very quick pace and they're throwing a lot of new information at you, there's a scene in which some very necessary and important things happen for some of our characters and for and for the story as a whole. But because it's so different, it's sort of like, it's noticeable enough. I don't know if I'd say it was bad, but it's noticeable enough. So I feel the need to at least mention it. And yeah, if you're a person who likes the feeling of closure and finality when you leave the movie theater, don't watch this movie. They raise a lot of questions that aren't answered by the end of the movie. I think that may speak to how good this movie is and how invested you become in the characters and the story that you want to immediately know everything. But the other thing about that is I realized that having to shift my mindset so that way I can appreciate the movie for, as much as I can for what it is. I think a part of that is just because we're not used to waiting as Star Wars fans. We're not used to living in a world where Star Wars isn't readily accessible, complete, and total. And even with the new prequels, I mean, they were prequels. They didn't really... they weren't adding on to a story, so to speak. I mean, it was just sort of coming in before and filling in some blanks of, didn't do it well, but it was just kind of filling in the gaps. And here we have a story that is actually being progressed and moved forward as opposed to going back. And it's not a feeling that I'm used to, because it's like, oh, so I have to wait and it's not here? I mean, because they could have raised up the lights and said, yo, if anybody wants to stick around, we got episode 8. It's about 9 hours long, but you can watch it now. I'd be like, fine, order me a pizza. We're not leaving. Turn the lights back down. We're doing this. But again, I guess that speaks to how good the movie is, where I want it completely and totally, right now. But I have to wait. Patience is just a trap. I don't like it. Another thing about, kind of shifting your mindset about, in order to best enjoy this movie is the fact that there are going to be new ideas and concepts introduced into this movie. And they took me a little getting used to. And that's kind of one of the other reasons why I felt the need to watch this movie again for a second time, just because I realized that there were certain aspects of the Star Wars universe that we just kind of took for granted as facts. And they weren't facts. They were just things that we never thought to question before. So when we see them, introducing, this new information, and you're kind of like, well, wait a minute, is that something we can do in the Star Wars universe? You realize, like, well, yeah, we can. We never once were told that we couldn't. So then after that, you then are able to kind of decide how you feel about it. I definitely think what they're doing with it, and the fact they're willing to go ahead and make their own opinion on the matter and add something new and expand it in new ways that we never thought to before, I definitely enjoyed that part. But yeah, it did take me a minute. It took me a second showing to kind of be like, all right, I got it. It's cool. I like it. I like it a lot. But yeah, ultimately, like I said, this movie gets a B+ for me. I could be argued into an A-. Maybe the third time I see it in 2D, I will be like, yeah, solid A-. But it's not a perfect film. It's not, but it is a very, very good film. It's a very good Star Wars film. So a lot to love in here. I really wish that we could talk I'm going to have to make a spoiler review so that way I can talk about everything, because I'm kind of trying to tiptoe around it. But I want to talk about everything because I'm a nerd, but whatever. Yeah, so tell me what you think. Comment below, subscribe, hit me up on my social medias. I'm on everything at the Tony Sanchez. Tony with an I, Sanchez with a Z. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. So that's it. Now we got to go back to waiting for more Star Wars. Rogue One's coming out in 11 months, but still, that's not the same, but whatever. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, love you, bye.